My dearest brothers and sisters, this is Tunia speaking. I love you so very much. Consider a man who says that he wants to be rich, no matter the cost or no matter what he has to do for it. Is this man actually being motivated by a desire towards wealth? Or is he being motivated by a movement away from fear and a movement away from feeling unseen, away from feeling unloved and feeling empty and without purpose? People are often motivated not by their desire to go towards something, but are instead motivated by their desire to move away from something. And that something is often unresolved and possibly even unconscious fear or pain. So, in today's message I will argue that a number of women, and also some men, are sometimes acting the way they do because of a movement away from an unresolved and possibly unconscious trauma. The person may have been traumatized in her current life, or in a past life. This trauma is that far too many children on earth have died, and still are dying to this day. Before we proceed, in this message, I will be discussing dead children and rape. So please only continue with this message if you are okay with those topics. So, let's get to it. My starting point will be obvious: having your child die is incredibly painful. So painful, in fact, that the pain of a dead child can linger into a person's next life, whereas people themselves dying is a pain that usually doesn't linger into a person's next life. As a result, not everyone, but a substantial amount of people carry around a, possibly subconscious, trauma around dead children. Meanwhile, not many people carry around a trauma about themselves dying. The next point I want to make is, being raped is absolutely awful in several ways. And one of the ways in which it is awful is that historically there was a chance that being raped could eventually lead to a dead child. After all, the rapist father isn't likely to stick around and protect and provide, which historically often meant a dead child. Plus, if she's raped, the woman doesn't have the chance to select a partner with high quality and compatible genes, which is done subconsciously through attraction, which means that her child is again more likely to die. So, certainly not the only, but one of the reasons why lots of women are so terrified of being raped is that historically a rape could lead to a dead child. And as we've established, the fear of a dead child is an incredibly strong fear, one that can linger across lifetimes. Some people might think that I'm being too theoretical here, and say that rape is simply awful because it's psychologically devastating. I absolutely agree that rape is awful because it's psychologically devastating. And I'm saying that one of the, not the only, but one of the reasons why it's psychologically devastating is that historically being raped could later lead to having a dead child. Another reason why being raped is awful is that it can be violent and can even lead to the woman's death. Yet, while that absolutely is another way in which being raped is awful, I don't think that typically weighs as heavily as the fear of dead children in the subconscious of the average woman. Of course, women are different. This is because, as we said, people have more inter-lifetime trauma around dead children than around their own deaths. To illustrate that, let's turn to a recent online debate, where women were asked, would you rather meet a bear in the forest, or would you rather meet a man in the forest? Now, logically speaking, the answer is that meeting a man is safer. After all, women come across let's say 100,000 men in their lives, and if they came across 100,000 bears they would almost certainly get eaten alive. Therefore one bear is more dangerous than one man. Now, it's true that overall, women are more likely to get raped or murdered by a man than she is likely to get eaten by a bear, but that's just because most women encounter huge amounts of men in their lives, and encounter either zero or a very few bears. The question wasn't whether a woman is more likely to get raped or murdered by a man than eaten by a bear in her life. The question was whether she would rather come face to face with one bear or one man in the forest. And one bear is clearly more dangerous than one man. Some people have a Disney view of bears, or think that if you just know one or two simple tricks then you can survive any bear encounter. But the reality is that wild animals are unpredictable. Timothy Treadwell was a bear enthusiast and founder of a bear protection organization, so he knew bears well, and he and his girlfriend got eaten by bears. Note that bears often pin down their victims and start eating them while they're still alive. It's a slow and torturous way to die. So the rational answer is that it's safer to meet a man than a bear. Yet, a number of, not all, women answered that they would rather meet a bear. What is going on? Well, as we discussed, the visceral fear of a dead child is often emotionally stronger than the fear of the person themselves being the victim of violence or murder. I think that's a big part of you have a number of, not all, women effectively saying that they prefer a higher chance of being eaten alive, over a smaller chance of being raped, which in turn might lead to a dead child. Those women answering that they'd rather meet a bear aren't usually thinking in such ways, but that's how it goes with emotional processes. First a choice gets made for emotional reasons, and then the rational mind is used to come up with a good-sounding justification for the choice. It's like how a person chasing wealth at all costs isn't consciously thinking that they're being motivated by feeling unloved, even if that's the thing driving their actions. So, I think the bear vs man debate points to the fear of dead children being active in a lot of people. And after all, why wouldn't this fear be active? Unfortunately, and this hurts my heart, every day many children are kidnapped on Earth, more than official statistics indicate. And these children may be raped or tortured or sacrificed, or their bodies are used as a resource for various kinds of products. And Earth humans, being psychic, deep down know this. So of course many Earth humans are anxious about dead children. Why wouldn't you be? In fact, because children are still being kidnapped every day, this is more of an ongoing trauma than a past trauma. But because people don't know that it's mostly the dark controllers who are behind it, this can manifest as hostility to, well, men. Because the tiny part of the population who kidnaps and rapes children are indeed mostly men. Even though the vast majority of men never do this. So on a subconscious, fear-based level, average men are seen as potential rapists, which means potentially dead children. And average men are seen as potential child kidnappers, which again means potentially dead children. And average men are seen as people who at the very least are failing to stop rape and stop kidnapping and hence stop children from dying.